You ever had one of those nights where you wished you'd just stayed in bed? Well, this was one of those nights for me. My name's Jack, and I work the graveyard shift at Walmart. You know, the one where the weirdos come out, the fluorescent lights buzz like they're alive, and the aisles get eerily quiet at 2 a.m. Yeah, that shift. That night started like any other. I was restocking shelves in the toy aisle, trying to ignore the faint echo of laughter coming from the far end of the store. Kids messing around, I thought. But when I looked up, the aisle was empty. The laugh didn't sound playful either. It was raspy, like someone choking on their own breath. I shook it off. It's late, I told myself. The mind plays tricks. Then, the store's PA system crackled to life. No announcement, no music, just static. I tried to ignore it, but it felt like the static was whispering. Words I couldn't quite make out. I walked over to the intercom near the electronics section, but before I could hit the button to reset it, the static stopped. Dead silence. I turned to head back to my cart, and that's when I saw her. A woman, standing at the end of the aisle, staring at me. She was wearing a dirty white dress, the kind you'd see in old wedding photos. Her hair hung over her face, but I swear, I could feel her eyes on me. "Ma'am," I called out, my voice trembling despite myself. She didn't respond, didn't move, just stood there. I took a step toward her, but as soon as I did, the lights above me flickered. When they stabilized, she was gone. I laughed nervously, trying to shake the unease crawling up my spine. Customers get weird sometimes, right? But as I turned to go back to my cart, I heard it again. That laugh, raspy and guttural, coming from the baby section to my left. This time, I didn't ignore it. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and headed toward the sound. The shelves were lined with dolls, the creepy, glass-eyed kind that always seemed to be staring at you no matter where you stood. As I moved closer to the sound, the laugh stopped. I reached the end of the aisle and saw one of the dolls lying on the floor. Its eyes blinked. Nope, nope, nope. I backed away, my heart pounding, but before I could turn, the doll spoke. "Play with me," it said in a voice that sounded like 100 whispers layered on top of each other. The damn thing moved, crawled. I dropped my phone and ran. I didn't care about the mess I was leaving behind or the fact that my manager would chew me out in the morning. I just needed to get out. As I sprinted through the aisles, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The store was empty. Not just quiet empty. Completely empty. No customers. No other employees. Just me. The automatic doors at the front of the store didn't budge as I approached. I slammed my fist against the glass, but they wouldn't open. The registers, the self-checkouts, all off. No hum of machines, no distant chatter of late-night shoppers. And then the lights went out. I froze. The only light came from the faint glow of my phone, lying back in the toy aisle where I dropped it. I didn't want to go back there. Hell, I didn't want to move at all. But then I heard it, footsteps. Heavy, slow, coming from the back of the store. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice echoing through the empty space. No answer, just the sound of boots on tile getting closer. I ducked into the cereal aisle, crouching behind a display of frosted flakes. My breath was shallow, my chest tight. The footsteps stopped, and then a voice, deep and gravelly. "Come out, Jack." It knew my name. I wanted to stay hidden, but something, curiosity, stupidity, who knows, made me peek around the corner. What I saw nearly made me scream. A man, or something that looked like a man, stood in the middle of the main aisle. His face was pale, almost translucent, and his eyes, they weren't eyes, just dark, empty sockets. He wore a Walmart vest, but it was filthy, covered in what looked like dried blood. "Jack," he said again, his head tilting unnaturally to one side. I clamped a hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. That's when the TVs in the electronics section lit up all at once. Static filled the screens, but in the middle of the static, I saw faces. Dozens of them, screaming, crying, some with hollow eyes like the man in the aisle. The TVs flickered, and a message appeared across all the screens. "You can't leave." My blood turned to ice. I don't remember how long I stayed there, crouched behind that display, but eventually, the lights flickered back on. The TVs went dark. The man was gone. The automatic doors at the front of the store slid open with a cheerful ding. I didn't think twice. I ran out into the parking lot, my legs shaking, my breath ragged. When I turned to look back at the store, it was completely normal. Lights on, customers walking in and out like nothing had happened. I quit the next day. Never set foot in a Walmart again. But sometimes, late at night when the world is quiet, I hear that laugh. And I know, it's not over. Here's the thing about quitting Walmart after that night. You'd think it'd be over. Just a creepy memory I'd shove into the back of my mind and never talk about. But weird stuff? It doesn't just let you walk away. A week after I left, I started noticing little things. At first, it was subtle. A chill in my apartment that wouldn't go away no matter how high I cranked the heat. My phone would buzz with notifications, but when I'd check it, there'd be nothing there. And then, there were the footsteps. I live on the second floor of a small complex. Thin walls, sure, but these weren't my neighbors. These were heavy, deliberate steps right above me. Thing is, there's no third floor. I tried to rationalize it. Pipes creaking, old building settling, the usual stuff. But deep down, I knew it was something else. One night, around 3 a.m., I woke up to a crash in my kitchen. My heart nearly stopped. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by my bed and crept toward the sound. The kitchen was dark, but the faint glow of the fridge light spilled across the floor. The door was wide open, food scattered everywhere. "Hello," I called out, gripping the bat so tight my knuckles turned white. No response. I moved closer, scanning the room for anything out of place. That's when I saw it. In the middle of the floor, surrounded by spilled milk and broken eggs, was a doll. The same glass-eyed doll from Walmart. I nearly dropped the bat. My mouth went dry, my mind racing. I didn't take that doll. I didn't even touch it. The doll's head turned slowly, its painted lips curling into a smile. "Play with me," it whispered. I swung the bat without thinking, smashing it into the doll with all my strength. The thing shattered into 100 pieces, its porcelain face breaking apart like eggshells. I stood there, breathing hard, waiting for, something, but the apartment went silent. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I decided I needed answers. Walmart was the last place I wanted to go, but it was the only place that might have them. I pulled into the parking lot just after midnight. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the lot eerily empty except for a few cars scattered here and there. The automatic doors slid open with a cheerful ding, and I stepped inside. The air felt heavy, oppressive. I made my way to the back of the store, where the toy aisle was. It looked normal, bright, colorful, packed with merchandise. But then I noticed the shelf where the dolls had been. It was empty. "Looking for something?" a voice said behind me. I spun around, my heart jumping into my throat. It was a man, maybe in his 50s, wearing a Walmart vest. His name tag read Tom. Yeah, I stammered. "There were these dolls here last week. Glass eyes, creepy as hell. What happened to them?" Tom's expression darkened. "We don't carry those anymore," he said, his voice low. "Too many incidents." "What kind of incidents?" He hesitated, glancing around like he didn't want anyone overhearing. "They'd show up where they weren't supposed to. Customers would complain about hearing voices. And then there was that kid." "What kid?" Tom sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Couple months ago, a boy went missing in the store. Security found him in the toy aisle, staring at one of those dolls. Wouldn't move, wouldn't speak, just staring. His parents took him to the hospital, but he's still not right. Won't talk to anyone. Just keeps saying, 'She's coming.'" A chill ran down my spine. "Who's she?" I asked. Tom didn't answer. Instead, he nodded toward the back of the store. "You want answers? Check the loading dock." Before I could ask him what he meant, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the next aisle. I stood there for a moment, debating whether to leave and pretend this never happened. But something pulled me toward the loading dock. The air got colder as I approached. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced across the concrete floor. The dock was deserted, except for a single wooden crate sitting in the middle of the room. It was old, the wood splintered and worn. A faint hum seemed to emanate from it, like it was alive. I stepped closer, my palms sweaty, my heart pounding in my ears. The crate had no markings, no labels, just a small, rusted latch keeping it shut. I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to turn around and leave. But then I heard it, the laugh. That same raspy, choking laugh from the toy aisle. It was coming from inside the crate. I reached for the latch, my hand shaking so badly I could barely grip it. With a deep breath, I pulled it open. What I saw inside, I'll never forget. A woman, pale and lifeless, her eyes black pits that seemed to swallow the light. Her mouth twisted into a wide, unnatural smile. She stared up at me, and though her lips never moved, I heard her voice clear as day. "Welcome back, Jack." I stumbled back, my legs giving out beneath me as the crate's lid slammed shut on its own. That voice, that horrifying, echoing whisper, seemed to linger in the air long after her words had faded. My breathing came in short, panicked gasps. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding as I bolted toward the exit. The loading dock stretched longer than I remembered, the shadows around me twisting like living things. The raspy laugh echoed again, this time from everywhere. It wasn't just one voice now. It was dozens, all overlapping, surrounding me. I ran faster, my sneakers squeaking on the concrete, until I burst into the main store. But something was wrong. The shelves were empty. Every aisle was stripped bare, just endless rows of metal racks and flickering lights. The cheerful hum of Walmart's late-night ambience was gone, replaced by a low, guttural hum that vibrated through my chest. "Jack," the voice called again, stretching my name like it enjoyed tasting the sound of it. I turned a corner, desperate to find an exit, and froze. The man from before, Tom, stood in the middle of the aisle, but something was off. His head was tilted at an unnatural angle, like someone had snapped his neck, yet he was still standing. His mouth stretched into a grotesque grin, wider than any human smile should ever be. "You can't leave, Jack," he said, his voice layered with others, like a broken choir singing out of tune. I stumbled back, bumping into a display rack that toppled over with a crash. Tom took a step toward me, his movements jerky, like a puppet being yanked along by invisible strings. And then I noticed them, eyes, thousands of them. They stared at me from the walls, the shelves, the ceiling, blinking in unison like they were alive. I ran. Every aisle seemed to twist and shift as I moved, leading me in circles. No matter where I turned, I ended up back at the toy aisle. The shelves were no longer empty, though. They were lined with the dolls, each one grinning, their heads slowly turning to watch me as I passed. The whispers grew louder. "Play with us," they chanted, their voices high and distorted. "Stay with us." I clutched my head, trying to drown out the noise, but it was inside me, crawling under my skin. "Let me out," I screamed, my voice cracking. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the noise stopped. The lights flickered once and went out, plunging me into darkness. I stood there, frozen, my chest heaving as I tried to listen for any sound. Anything. And then, from the shadows, she emerged. The woman from the crate. She moved unnaturally, her limbs bending at impossible angles as she crept toward me. Her smile never wavered, those black, empty eyes locked onto mine. "You belong here, Jack," she said, her voice sweet, almost gentle. "Stay with us, forever." I stumbled back, tripping over a fallen shelf. She was inches away now, her icy breath brushing against my face. "No," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "No, no, no." She tilted her head, her smile growing wider. "You can't leave," she said. "You never left." Her hand reached out, cold fingers brushing against my cheek. And then I woke up. I was lying in my bed, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would break through my ribs. It was just a dream, I thought, a nightmare. But as I sat up, trying to steady my breathing, I froze. Sitting on my nightstand was a doll. Its glass eyes stared at me, unblinking, this porcelain face twisted into a grin. And from somewhere in the darkness of my room, I heard her voice again. "Welcome home, Jack." I couldn't move. My eyes were locked on the doll, its painted smile somehow more menacing in the dim glow of my bedside clock. 3:33 a.m. That cursed time. Her voice whispered again, soft yet cutting through the silence like a razor. "Did you miss me?" The room felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in. My breath hitched, and I finally forced myself to move, grabbing the doll and throwing it across the room. It hit the wall with a hollow thud, landing face up on the floor. The smile hadn't changed. "Get out of my house," I screamed, my voice shaking. A low, guttural laugh answered, coming from everywhere and nowhere all at once. "You think you left?" she said, her voice oozing with mockery. "You never left, Jack. You're still there, still with us." I stumbled out of bed, flipping on every light in my apartment, hoping to banish the oppressive darkness. But the lights didn't help. The shadows seemed alive, slithering and pulsing in the corners of my vision. I grabbed my phone, desperate to call someone, anyone. But when I unlocked it, the screen was filled with static. My contacts were gone, replaced by a single message. "Look behind you." My heart stopped. I didn't want to turn around. I didn't want to see, but I did. The woman was there, standing in the doorway to my bedroom. Her black eyes glittered like oil slicks, her smile stretching impossibly wide. "You belong to me now," she said, her voice echoing like it came from inside my skull. I backed away, fumbling for anything I could use as a weapon. My hands landed on the baseball bat by my bed. I swung it at her with all my strength, but it passed through her like smoke. Her laughter filled the room, rising in pitch until it was unbearable. "Run," she whispered. I didn't need to be told twice. I bolted out of the apartment, not even stopping to grab my shoes. The hallway outside was empty and dead silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. The elevator at the end of the hall dinged, the doors sliding open on their own. I didn't question it. I ran inside and slammed the lobby button. The elevator groaned as it descended, the fluorescent light above flickering erratically. Halfway down, the elevator jolted to a stop, throwing me against the wall. The light went out, plunging me into darkness. And then her voice, "Going somewhere?" I screamed, pounding on the doors, desperate to get out. But they wouldn't budge. The light flickered back on, and I saw her standing in the corner of the elevator. Her head tilted at that unnatural angle, her black eyes boring into me. "You can't escape, Jack," she said, her smile never fading. "You're mine." The elevator jolted again, and the doors slid open. I stumbled out, expecting to find the lobby. But instead, I was back in Walmart, the toy aisle. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "This isn't real. This isn't real." The shelves were lined with the dolls again, all of them smiling, their heads turning to follow me. The whispers started, growing louder with each step I took. "You belong here. Stay with us. Forever." I ran, the aisles stretching endlessly, twisting and shifting like a maze. No matter which way I turned, I ended up back at the same place. The loading dock. The crate was there, its lid wide open, and standing beside it was her. "You can't leave," she said, her voice a symphony of whispers and screams. "You're already home." I turned to run, but the shadows closed in, wrapping around me like a living thing. I felt myself being pulled back toward the crate no matter how hard I fought. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me was her smile, impossibly wide, her black eyes glinting with triumph. And then silence. I woke up in my bed again, drenched in sweat, my body trembling. The clock read 3:33 a.m. The doll was back on my nightstand, its glass eyes unblinking. This time I didn't throw it. This time I just stared at it and it stared back. Because deep down I knew the truth. I never left, and I never will. Days blurred into nights, and I stopped counting them altogether. My apartment felt less like a home and more like a prison. The doll never moved, but it didn't have to. Its presence was enough. A constant, silent reminder that I wasn't alone. I stopped sleeping. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, too afraid to close my eyes. Every shadow seemed to crawl. Every creak of the building felt like her footsteps. The laughter, raspy and hollow, never stopped. It was faint at first, like it was just in the back of my mind. But each night, it grew louder, closer, until it felt like it was coming from inside the walls. Then came the knocking. It started softly, just a gentle tap-tap-tap at my bedroom window. I live on the second floor, no fire escape, no ledge, nothing that could explain it. The first night, I ignored it, pulling the covers over my head like a scared kid. But the knocking didn't stop. It grew louder, more insistent. By the third night, it sounded like fists pounding against the glass. "Jack?" a voice whispered, muffled but unmistakable. Her voice. I couldn't take it anymore. I jumped out of bed, heart hammering in my chest, and yanked the curtains open. The window was empty, or so I thought. Just as I turned away, I saw it. A handprint smeared across the glass. It wasn't a normal handprint, though. The fingers were too long, too thin, and the palm looked like it belonged to something not quite human. I backed away, tripping over my own feet, and fell hard onto the floor. "Jack!" she whispered again, this time from behind me. I spun around, but the room was empty. I wasn't alone, though. I could feel her. The air was heavy, thick with her presence. My skin prickled, and every instinct screamed at me to run. But there was nowhere to go. The walls started to close in, the edges of the room warping like I was inside some twisted funhouse. The shadows stretched, reaching for me with clawed fingers. "Why fight it?" her voice cooed, soft and mocking. "You belong to me." I screamed, bolting for the door, but it wouldn't budge. The handle was ice cold, the wood slick with something wet and sticky. "Let me out," I yelled, pounding on the door until my fists ached. The laughter returned, louder than ever, echoing all around me. And then the doll spoke. "You can't leave, Jack," it said, its voice layered with hers, distorted and unnatural. I turned to face it, my chest heaving with panic. The doll was still on the nightstand, but now it was moving. Slowly, unnaturally, it turned its head to look at me, its glass eyes gleaming with malice. "Why do you run?" it asked. "You've been chosen." "Chosen for what?" I demanded, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. The doll didn't reply. Instead, it smiled wider, the porcelain cracking around its mouth, and began to laugh. I grabbed the nearest object, a lamp, and hurled it at the doll. It shattered into pieces, but the laughter didn't stop. It was everywhere now, surrounding me, suffocating me. And then I saw her. She emerged from the shards of the doll, her form twisted and wrong, like she was pieced together from broken reflections. Her black eyes locked onto mine, and that smile, God, that smile, stretched across her face like a wound. "This is your home now," she said, her voice echoing with finality. The room dissolved around me, the walls melting into darkness. I was falling, weightless and cold, her laughter ringing in my ears. When I woke up, I was back in Walmart, the toy aisle. The shelves were full again, lined with dolls that all turned to stare at me as I stood there, trembling. "You can't escape," they whispered in unison, and I knew they were right. I don't know how long I've been here. Time doesn't work the same way anymore. The aisles stretch on forever, and no matter how far I run, I always end up back at the toy aisle, back with her. If you're reading this, stay away from Walmart, especially at night, because once you're here, you'll never leave. Just like me. I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe it's hope, the desperate belief that someone out there might find this, might read it, and do what I couldn't, get away. Or maybe it's just insanity. I've been here so long, I don't know what's real anymore. The Walmart isn't just a store. It's alive. It breathes, it watches, it waits. I can feel it, the way the air shifts when I move, the way the lights hum like they're whispering secrets to each other. And her, the woman, the thing that haunts these aisles, she's a part of it. Or maybe it's a part of her. The dolls are everywhere now. They don't just stay in the toy aisle. They're in the electronics section, propped on the counters in the pharmacy, peering down from the high shelves in the warehouse. Their eyes follow me, always watching, always smiling. But it's not just the dolls. The people are here too. Or at least they were people once. I've seen them, wandering the aisles like lost shadows. Their faces are pale, their movements stiff and unnatural. They don't talk, don't blink, don't even seem to breathe. Sometimes they look at me. Their eyes are like hers. Black, empty, endless. I tried talking to one once, a woman in a tattered Walmart vest. She was standing in the frozen food aisle, staring at a bag of peas like it held the secrets of the universe. "Hey," I said, my voice shaky. "Can you help me? How do I get out of here?" She turned slowly, her neck creaking like an old door hinge. Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, I thought I saw something human in them. Then she smiled. "You're already out," she said, her voice hollow and distant. "But you'll never leave." I backed away, heart pounding, and she went back to staring at the peas like nothing had happened. I've tried everything to escape. I've run down the aisles until my legs gave out, screamed for help until my throat was raw. I even tried smashing the front doors with a metal display rack, but they didn't even crack. It's like this place exists outside of the real world. And the worst part? I'm starting to forget. I don't remember how long I've been here. Days? Weeks? Years? My memories of my life before this are slipping away, like sand through my fingers. I can barely picture my apartment, my friends, my family. Sometimes I wonder if they ever existed at all. And then there's her. She doesn't appear every night, but when she does, it's worse than any nightmare. She'll stand at the end of an aisle, just watching me with those black, soulless eyes. Or I'll feel her breath on the back of my neck, turn around, and find nothing but empty air. She's toying with me, breaking me down piece by piece. Last night, she spoke to me again. "You're one of us now, Jack," she said, her voice echoing through the empty store. "Stop fighting. Accept it." I don't know what she means, but I'm terrified that she's right. I can feel myself changing. My reflection in the freezer doors doesn't look like me anymore. My skin is pale, almost gray, and my eyes, they're starting to darken. The worst part of me doesn't want to leave. There's a strange comfort in the routine here. The aisles never change, the lights never dim, and she's always there, watching. It's like a twisted version of home. But I know that's not real. It's the store getting into my head, making me believe I belong here. If you're reading this, don't come looking for me. Don't try to save me. Just stay away. And if you ever find yourself in a Walmart late at night, and the aisles feel too long, the lights too bright, the shadows too deep, run. Don't look back. Because once you're here, you'll never leave. Just like me. I can't stop writing, even though I know it's pointless. Words are all I have left to remind me that I was once human. That there was a time before this endless maze of aisles and her voice inside my head. But something changed last night. Something worse than anything I've experienced so far. Started around 3:33 a.m., like it always does. That's when the lights flicker, when the whispers crawl out from the walls, and when the laughter begins. I'd grown used to it in a way, or at least as much as anyone could. But this time, the laughter wasn't hers. It was mine. I heard it before I even realized what was happening. My own voice, twisted and distorted, echoing through the store, came from everywhere at once, surrounding me, mocking me. "Jack," it said, dragging my name out in a tone that made my skin crawl. "Why do you run? You know you belong here." "No," I screamed, clamping my hands over my ears. "You're not me. You're not me." But the laughter only grew louder, spilling over the shelves, reverberating through the floors. And then I saw it. My reflection standing at the end of the aisle. It wasn't in a mirror or a shiny surface. It was just there, staring back at me like a shadow that had pulled itself free. It looked like me, but it wasn't. Its skin was pale and cracked. Its eyes were pits of endless black, and its mouth was twisted into that same horrible smile she wore. "Come on, Jack," it said, stepping closer. Stop fighting. Let it happen. I backed away, my legs trembling. You're not real, I whispered, though I didn't believe it. You're not real. Oh, but I am, it replied, tilting its head. I'm what you're becoming, what you've always been. I turned and ran, my footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence. The aisles stretched and twisted around me, leading nowhere. No matter how fast or far I ran, I could feel it behind me. Close, too close. The laughter shifted, blending into hers, and I could hear them both now, mocking, taunting, dragging me deeper into their hell. Finally, I stumbled into the electronics section. The TVs were on, all of them flickering with static. But as I got closer, the static faded, replaced by an image that froze me in my tracks. It was me, not the twisted, pale version, but the real me, the me I used to be, standing in a Walmart vest, smiling like nothing was wrong. No, I whispered, shaking my head. That's not me. But the TVs didn't lie. The image zoomed out, showing me walking the aisles, stocking shelves, helping customers. Just another employee on the night shift. And then I saw her. She was standing beside me in the footage, her black eyes locked onto the camera, her smile wide and terrible. You've been here all along, her voice said, echoing through the electronics section. You never left, Jack. You've always been one of us. The TVs went dark and I felt it, the pull, like invisible hands grabbing me, dragging me back toward the toy aisle. I fought, clawing at the floor, screaming for help that I knew would never come. But it didn't matter. The store always wins. The last thing I remember is the dolls. Their glass eyes gleamed in the flickering light as they surrounded me, their voices rising in a haunting chorus. Stay with us, Jack, they whispered. Forever. And then, nothing. When I woke up, I wasn't in the toy aisle. I wasn't even in Walmart. I was in my old apartment, lying in bed, the clock reading 3:33 a.m. For a brief, beautiful moment, I thought it was over, that I'd escaped. But then I saw the doll sitting on my nightstand. Its cracked porcelain face smiled at me, its glass eyes unblinking. And from the shadows, her voice whispered, "You're home, Jack. Welcome back." Now, every time I look in the mirror, I see it. The black creeping into my eyes, the pale gray of my skin. I'm becoming one of them. It's only a matter of time. I don't know how much longer I can fight it. Every day I feel less like myself and more like them. The thing in the mirror, the twisted version of me, it's not just a reflection anymore. It moves on its own, smiling when I don't, tilting its head when I stand still. It's watching, waiting, and the worst part, I'm starting to see it everywhere. Yesterday, I went outside. My first time leaving the apartment since all this began. I thought maybe the fresh air would help, that being around normal people would remind me of who I am. But the world isn't normal anymore. First, everything seemed fine. The sun was shining. People were walking their dogs. Cars hummed along the streets. But then I noticed the shadows. They moved wrong. I saw a man jogging on the sidewalk, his shadow stretching far ahead of him, too long and too thin. It twitched unnaturally, as if it had a mind of its own. I looked at my own shadow, and my blood ran cold. It wasn't mine. It was hers. Her twisted form, her black eyes and jagged smile, stretching out behind me like a dark stain on the pavement. I ran. I didn't know where I was going, just away. But no matter how far I went, the shadow stayed with me, growing larger, darker, until it seemed to engulf everything around me. And then I saw them, the people. At first, they looked normal, just shoppers and commuters and parents with their kids. But as I got closer, I saw their eyes, black, empty. They smiled as I passed, their grins wide and unnatural. "You belong here, Jack," one of them said, their voice a perfect echo of hers. I stumbled into a coffee shop, hoping to find some kind of sanctuary. The barista looked up, smiling brightly, but her eyes were black. "What can I get you, Jack?" she asked, her voice dripping with mockery. I backed away, bumping into a table and knocking over a cup of coffee. The liquid spread across the floor, dark and viscous, and as I stared at it, I saw my reflection again. The twisted version of me smiled, its black eyes boring into mine. "You can't escape," it said, the words forming soundlessly on its cracked lips. I ran out of the shop, the laughter following me, echoing through the streets like a chorus of nightmares. Now I'm back in my apartment, but it doesn't feel like home anymore. The shadows on the walls move when I'm not looking, and the doll on my nightstand is always watching. I tried throwing it away. I stuffed it into a garbage bag, drove to the edge of town, and dumped it in a river. I watched it sink, the water swallowing it whole. But when I got back home, it was waiting for me, sitting on the couch, its porcelain face cracked but still smiling. "You can't get rid of me," it said, its voice soft and melodic. "I'm part of you now, and I think it's right." My skin is pale and cold, my veins darkening like ink spreading through water. My eyes sting when I look at bright lights, and I can't remember the last time I ate or slept. She's winning. I don't know what's going to happen when the change is complete, but I'm scared. Scared of what I'll become. If you're reading this, heed my warning. Stay away from Walmart. It's not just a store. It's a trap, a gateway to something far worse than you can imagine. And if you ever see a doll with glass eyes and a cracked porcelain smile, run. Run and don't look back. Because if you don't, you'll end up like me. And once you're here, you'll never leave. I woke up today feeling different. It wasn't just the exhaustion or the creeping cold that had been crawling through my veins for days. No, this was something deeper, something final. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the person staring back at me. My skin was gray, mottled like rotting fruit, and my eyes, they weren't mine anymore. The blackness had spread, swallowing the whites and leaving nothing but dark, endless voids. I barely had time to process it before the whispers started again. "Jack!" Her voice cooed, soft and sweet, like a mother calling her child. I turned to the bedroom door, but it wasn't there anymore. In its place was an aisle. Not my apartment hallway, but one of Walmart's endless, twisting aisles. "You can't run anymore," she whispered, her voice closer now. "It's time to come home." The doll was sitting on the nightstand, its porcelain face cracked and grinning, its glass eyes unblinking. "Go to her," it said, its voice sharp and hollow. "You don't belong here." And the worst part? It was right. I don't belong here. Not in my apartment, not in the world outside. Whatever's happening to me, it's almost complete. I can feel it in my bones, in my mind, in the way the shadows cling to me like old friends. I walked into the aisle, my steps slow and heavy. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering in time with the pounding of my heart. The shelves stretched endlessly on either side of me, lined with the same cracked dolls, their heads turning to follow me as I passed. "She's waiting," they whispered. "She's always been waiting." At the end of the aisle, I saw her. She was standing in the center of the toy section, her black eyes gleaming, her twisted smile wide and inviting. "You're finally ready," she said, her voice echoing through the store. "No," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. I'm not ready." Her smile widened, and she took a step toward me. "You've been ready since the moment you walked through those doors," she said. "You just didn't know it." I stumbled back, my hands brushing against the shelves, knocking over rows of dolls. They fell to the floor, shattering like glass, their laughter spilling out and echoing around me. "You can fight," she said, tilting her head. "But it won't matter. You've always belonged here, Jack. You've always been mine." I turned and ran, my legs moving on instinct, even though I knew it was useless. The aisles twisted and shifted around me, leading nowhere. Every corner I turned brought me back to her, standing there with that awful smile. "You can't escape," she said, her voice rising, filling the air like a storm. "You never could." And then I saw him, the shadow, the twisted version of me. It stepped out from the darkness, its black eyes locking onto mine, its grin matching hers. "This is who you are now," it said, its voice a perfect echo of my own. This is who you've always been. No, I whispered, shaking my head. This isn't real. This isn't me. But deep down, I knew the truth. The shadow lunged at me, and I braced myself, but instead of colliding, it merged with me. I felt it crawl under my skin, into my mind, filling every part of me with its cold, dark presence. And then, everything went still. The aisles disappeared. The dolls, the lights, the laughter, it was all gone. I was standing in Walmart's parking lot, the early morning sun breaking over the horizon. For a moment, I thought I was free, but then I looked down. My reflection stared back at me in the car window. Not me, the other me, the shadow, the thing I'd become. And as I looked closer, I saw her, standing just behind me, her black eyes glinting, her smile wider than ever. "You're home, Jack," she said, her voice soft and sweet. "Welcome back. And now I understand. I'm not escaping. I never escaped. I am the trap. If you see me in Walmart working the night shift, walking the aisles, stocking the shelves, don't say a word. Don't even look at me. Just run. Because if you don't, you'll end up just like me. And once you're here, you'll never leave. There's no running from this anymore. No fighting. No escape. I've accepted what I've become, though I wish I hadn't. If you're reading this, it means I've made my choice. Or maybe the choice was never mine to begin with. Walmart isn't just a store. It's a hunger, a machine that consumes people and spits out something different. It lured me in like it's lured in so many others. And now I'm part of it. The final transformation wasn't painful, not in the way you'd expect. It was subtle, like slipping into a dream that you never wake up from. First, I still felt like me, but piece by piece, the memories faded, replaced by the store, the aisles, the dolls, her. I still see her, of course. She watches, always just out of reach, smiling, waiting, guiding. And the worst part? I'm smiling too now. When I look in the mirror, I don't see fear anymore. I don't see resistance. I see her reflection in mine, and I feel the pull of the store in my veins. I'm one of them. Now I stand in the aisles just like the others. I watch. I wait. I smile at the shoppers as they pass, wondering who the store will choose next. If you come into Walmart late at night and see me stacking shelves, don't speak to me. Don't ask me for help. Don't look me in the eyes. Because once you do, the store will see you. And once it sees you, it never lets go. I've seen so many people come through these doors, their faces blurred in my fading memories. Some of them were like me, desperate, searching for something to fill the void. Others were just unlucky, caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. But they all end up the same. Sooner or later, the aisles stretch too long, the lights buzz too loud, and the whispers start to crawl under their skin. The store doesn't care who you are. It only cares that you stay. So I write this as my final warning, though I know it's already too late for me. Stay away from Walmart at night. Stay away from the endless aisles, the flickering lights, the cold, unfeeling silence. And if you ever see me, walking the aisles, my smile too wide and my eyes too dark, run. Because once you step through those sliding doors, you'll never leave. Not really, just like me.